All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk to you today. It is Friday, time for the free-for-all, and I do hear myself in the background. There's always some issue that crops up, technically driving me batty, and I don't really get that. I guess I had that volume turned up yesterday when I was listening post-show to see how I sounded, and that should have been should have been more careful. My bad. I do apologize. I hope you caught yesterday's program, by the way. That's why I was watching. We really want to see how things were with Bill Neal. He was outstanding, I thought. Really learned a lot from Bill, and kind of a different perspective, at least than the one I provide. He's a little more, I wouldn't say centrist, but maybe center left, kind of more like Arlen in certain ways than I am. So you get a little bit of variability there, not just my opinion, which I really appreciate, and Bill obviously very knowledgeable. So you may want to check out yesterday's program. I also would urge you, please do call in. Hold my feet to the fire. I definitely have strong opinions. I make them known. I try to defend them as best I can. I think I do a pretty good job of it, but you may disagree. If you do, and you're watching live, just call, pick up the blower, 240-242-5646. It's not hard, and I will talk to you. I have heard from some rando callers, meaning random people I didn't know beforehand, and then they become friends. So that's awesome. So please do call in if you have the yen to do so. And I promise I will be polite. I promise I will be nice. I promise I'll be respectful. Let me get my logo right there in the middle so you see all of it. It's not cut off. And yes, Friday is the day for the free-for-all. Starting early today because, and I mentioned this, I'm going to be doing a career day presentation where my wife teaches. She is an elementary school teacher, so I'll be talking to, I think, the fifth graders who might be interested in what a YouTuber, live streamer, content creator, call me what you will, a broadcaster. So they may be more interested. Maybe the lower grades will hear on career day from maybe, I would guess, teachers, firefighters, police, people that they see that they come in contact with. Someone who's more involved in a technical career, such as myself, lawyers, people like that, I think may be held off for the slightly higher grades. This program, and I have said this recently, really kind of because of what the protesters have been saying on the college campuses, that makes so much sense to me, is focusing as much as I possibly can. I may do this beforehand. I'm not saying this is brand new, but really I'm mindful of keeping the focus, keeping the center on the victims, the people that those with wealth, with influence, with power are hurting. And the victims right now, we see certainly among those suffering the most because of unchecked, abusive power are the people of Palestine, most specifically those in Gaza. Not that West Bank Palestinians aren't being persecuted, oppressed, killed, but not the outright slaughter that Israel's war on Gaza has created for 2.5 million people. And I do want to respond to what Professor Galloway from NYU said on Morning Joe, that there's somehow a disconnect, that those of us who are speaking out against the genocide by Israel in Gaza are ignoring what's happening in Sudan. And perhaps that's fair. Perhaps, there's so many bad things happening in the world. This program is U.S. based. I focus on what the United States is doing, what we do that's good, what we do that's bad, what happens in this country that's positive, what happens in this country that's negative. Our role in Sudan is certainly not a positive one in many ways. U.S. multinational corporations that receive all manner of benefits from us, our military, our weapons manufacturers are almost certainly somewhat responsible for the slaughter in Sudan. And we should be more active. We should be doing more with the United Nations to stop it. But to my knowledge, which is always limited, of course, we're not actively putting our thumb on the scale on the side of genocidal monsters the way we are right now. in Israel, Gaza. We are actually aiding and abetting genocide. In Ukraine, we are profiting from the endless war there that we're perpetuating rather than trying to stop that killing, the killing in Eastern Europe that continues. So I focus on those because they are U.S. actions. They implicate directly what we do here in this country on a day-to-day basis. That's the difference. And I think Dr. Galloway from NYU, erudite, you can go watch his video, Google Morning Joe, Galloway, something of that sort, erudite, glib, completely misses the most important point. And certainly the protesters on the college campuses are focused on what the United States and specifically their colleges are doing. Are they divesting? Are they investing in the Israel killing machine? So I don't really think this is a hard one. We are talking about United States policy here that is directly complicit in the genocide in Gaza in a way that we are not directly complicit in what's happening in Sudan and other hotspots around the world. Latest news, this is again, I go to Al Jazeera, they have an extraordinary coverage there. And again, those will say, some will say, oh, I can't believe you take the word of Al Jazeera. Again, over and over, they have not been found in any way, to my knowledge, despite all the fact checkers and all the, the Pinocchio writers out there. Al Jazeera is consistently found to be reliable, credible. The numbers that they rely on have been determined to be as accurate as we can be, given what happens during wartime. And if anything, they have undercounted the dead and the wounded. Just the opposite of Israel, which exaggerates the number of people that it has lost. So from today's Al Jazeera, another 26 Gazans killed in the past 24 hours, 51 injured, including 7 people killed in a house bombing, 4 children. You know, one of the media games is often, oh, can you imagine how people would react if, the slaughter hadn't been of those innocents in Israel at that concert back on October 7th? It just shows you the double standard. People just don't blink their eyes and don't really care about what happens to Israel. Jews are going to be victims and nobody cares. That's one of the media games to try to say, well, no, there's a double standard here. Israel can be victimized and nobody cares. But when Palestine is, suffers the results of their actions, somehow Israel is unfairly targeted. It's such complete and utter nonsense. It's such complete BS. My question would be to all of those, the CNNers, the Dana Bashes, who think Israel is somehow getting a raw deal in the media. Can you imagine what kind of coverage you would be providing if the Hamas had bombed, or Hezbollah or Iran had bombed a house in Israel, killed 7 people, including 4 children? Can you imagine the round-the-clock coverage, the reporters, the language that will be using, the atrocity, the tragedy? But here, it's just reduced to 2 lines in Al Jazeera and completely ignored by every other media outlet. So yes, there's clearly a double standard. Basically, Israel can do whatever the hell it wants, and with few exceptions, the media ignores it. Students aren't ignoring it. And that's why the establishment, the elites in both parties, the college presidents and trustees are really shaken. They're really upset. They're calling out the police. The violence is being brought home to students because they dare raise their voices in unison against this ethnic cleansing, these atrocities that we are aiding and abetting. And by the way, that's again why we're covering it. Because there's a threat right now to the corporate elites who completely dominate and control this country. And they are reacting with aggression, with violence, with cruelty. We'll get to a video of that shortly. This is the free-for-all. It's kind of a recap of the whole week's coverage. So you may see some stories that I've touched on before. I do want to show you a video of Dr. Stein being arrested, Jill Stein. We showed video earlier this week of Kelly also being arrested at the same protest, but Dr. Stein running for president. She is the one candidate for whom you really can vote without moral qualms, without guilt. So I strongly urge you to do that. We'll also talk about the uncommitted movement in Maryland way to register disapproval of the Democrats. And is it really registering disapproval? If you vote uncommitted, are you really making any difference at all? So we'll talk a little bit about that. I hope to hear from you, 240-242-5646. I have a hard ending of today's program at 12:30 Eastern time. So just another 50 minutes or so. Really want to commend Al Jazeera. They're using the kind of language I used during the late aughts, right, 2008, 2009, to describe our war on Iraq, war on the people of Iraq that George W. Bush launched, actually earlier than that, 2003. It's not a war in the traditional sense where you have two armies squaring off against each other that have, special training, mechanized weaponry. Basically, you have one of the most efficient, most highly advanced militaries in the world squaring off against people that it's been keeping in basically medieval conditions. So it's not a war. It's not a war between armies. It's a war on a people. It's Israel's war on Gaza, on the people of Gaza, and that is the correct phrasing. And thank you, Al Jazeera, for recognizing that and reporting it as such. I mentioned that, that you understand, let me put it that way, that this is not a traditional war, like Germany invades France, and it's a war, right? The French have an army, the Germans have an army. Sometimes the German army, like in 1940, is a lot better than the French. Other times they're more closely matched. And sometimes the French army is better, like in 1800, I guess, 1801, when Napoleon conquered Europe. So those are two large countries with sizable populations that were throughout history. Well, Germany wasn't united until the end of the 19th century, but in recent years have been united with the capacity of building powerful armies, and at the same time also being having control over their region where they live, of the people in their region. It's just not what you have at all in Gaza. Israel occupies Gaza. Israel is in control. Israel military goes in and has been going in at will into that area. And every now and then, they get shot at and a few people may be killed. But as you can see from the numbers, very, very few. In fact, we're seeing, now close to 35,000 Palestinians, probably well over that, have been killed. And the death toll in Israel stands at 1139. That's from the October 7 attacks. I never hear about Israeli soldiers being killed in Gaza. Maybe every now and then it happens, but it seems extremely rare. That's not a war. A war, both sides suffer casualties. Both sides suffer deaths. Even at the end of World War II, the U.S. Army, certainly in Europe, in the European theater of operations, it was deadly. You could get shot and killed at any time until there was a surrender. It's not the case. It's not a war that is in any way, reflects some kind of balance between two nations, two independent nations. It's one country that's occupied another, that has persecuted another, that has held down another, that's kept its boot on the throat of the other, now going there and actually cutting off the oxygen that it's grudgingly let in the past. That is what is happening. We'll get to Dr. Stein's arrest. I want to show a little video of her and the arrest in a moment. But from the college campuses, again, this is what the students are fighting for. And no matter how much the media mocks them, the elites, the comfortable, the affluent, the privileged, make fun of those students who have really put themselves at risk. Some have been attacked without police protection, often themselves been attacked by the police, but they are in some places really making a difference. We talked about Brown University. The students there will be meeting with the Board of Trustees. Here at Evergreen State College in Washington State, they agreed there to actually divest from Israel. So that's a win. That's what I call a win. I don't call meeting with the Board of Trustees a win. I worry that that's performative, that the Brown mockers aren't going to do jack. But maybe they will. And yes, at least you get an audience. So there is something to be said for that. Certainly a lot to be said for that. But this is the win. This is what we're, fighting for, at least the best we can hope for college students, is that divestment. So, bravo. And, it's going to cause a lot of angst, a lot of anger. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of Wall Street brokers, a lot of military-industrial complex folks who are going to be very, very troubled by this development. My gosh, the people actually may be saying no to war, to endless war, to profits for weapons manufacturers. So there'll be blowback. Students deserve an extraordinary amount of praise for this. I want to get to the Stein arrest. By the way, again, call me if you can. Love to talk to you, 240-242-5646. Really, really, really want to hear what you have to say, not just what I have to say. And I will show you an email I got that was pretty harshly critical of me. And I'm not happy about it exactly, but hey, I'll take it. I'll take any criticism because, your voice matters. On Halitics, your voice matters. And if it's the voice is to say how you're all wet, you know what you're talking about, fine. I'll explain why I think I do know what I'm talking about, and you can believe that or not as you wish. Dr. Stein, Jill Stein for president. She's the one candidate I believe that we can vote for with a clear conscience. Dr. Stein was on News Nation, which I guess they do. That's Chris Cuomo's new project, or he's certainly part of it. I don't know if it's his exactly, but he's a big part of News Nation. And I give him credit. They platformed Jill Stein. I don't know that the New York Times has really done anything with Jill Stein. They don't want anything to do with her. From News Nation, Dr. Jill Stein arrested violently, I believe it was Sunday, along with 100 others or so, may have a rib fracture, and she urges Biden. So she's always keeping the focus. She's keeping her eyes on the prize, which is get the hell out of any Israel support role, U.S. Get in the business of ending the genocide, of protecting the victims, the weak, the oppressed. That's what we should be doing. And we are, of course, doing just the opposite. 70-year-old, I think Dr. Stein is 70. Maybe she's a couple of years even older than that. In the end, I don't think it matters that much, right, how old she is. But, within a year or two. But you're talking about a senior. You're talking about a small person. You're talking about somebody who is not, as flexible, as strong as somebody who's 25 or 22, like many of the college protesters who may even be younger than that, right? Could be teenagers. So the police are beating up on and I want to say frail, she's not frail, but you know, falls can be very, very dangerous. And obviously, the St. Louis Police Department just doesn't give a fat rat's butt. And obviously, the trustees, the president, the administration at St. Louis, the University of Washington University of St. Louis. Okay, there's St. Louis University. It's a Catholic school. That is not what we're talking about here. Washington University in St. Louis. They don't give a crap.
Dr. Stein, you say that you and your staff were assaulted by police. What happened?
Well, you can look at the videos that are all over the internet, which show that we were part of a peaceful demonstration, a Gaza encampment for to stop the genocide. Basically, genocide is not a Jewish value.
All right, I want to stop that right there for just a sec, so you can see that image. And Dr. Stein is standing with some students, obviously to her right, and some older folks to her left. She's going to tell you who some of those older folks are in a moment. But this image, when I saw it, I was like, wow, I'm sort of surprised, because Washington University said that they were just a bunch of outside agitators responsible for this protest. Obviously not the case. Obviously, you see lots of students there. They're clearly students. They look like students. They're dressed like students. They're the age of students. To her right, but also behind her, you can see more student faces, young faces, standing up against oppression. Also professors. So they're part of the university community. That we're not talking about, again, outside agitators. I guess you could say Dr. Stein is an outside agitator. But she'll explain why she was there. Not just decide, oh, I'm going to jump in front of the parade or try to start a parade. Not at all, but somebody who was, in fact, invited. So let's play
very
that.
much opposed to the interests of Jews and the security of Israel, actually, and Jews in Israel. It is not an American value. So I don't regard this as pro one side or other. This is pro human rights. This is anti-genocide. This is fundamentally an anti-genocide demonstration where we were asked by students to come and participate and to stand with them as police really threatened them. There in that picture, you actually see us standing with some of the aldermen of St. Louis who are also taking the part of the students and their right to protest, their right to discuss and debate a very critical issue in American foreign policy right now, and their right, of free speech. So we were there, and basically the police charged us, despite our efforts to, to de-escalate. They charged us with bicycles, and you'll see plenty of footage of that around the internet. They basically used their bicycles as a weapon to push us back, to push us over onto our backs. And in my case, one of the officers actually lifted up one of my feet. You can see in some of this footage where I'm basically being thrown backwards, like onto my head. And I wiggled out of that assault and was told by the officer that I was assaulting him, which is absolutely ludicrous. There was at least one other person who was also charged with assault, who was in fact being assaulted, and about 100 people were arrested and charged with essentially trespassing and resisting arrest. So it was a very unfortunate illustration of the militarization of our police, who've actually been trained very often in conjunction with the Israeli military forces, who are bringing those tactics, very anti-humane and abusive tactics to ordinary policing. You basically have riot police who are creating a riot.
All right, so I'll stop it there, and we'll investigate a little bit more about what she said, about what Dr. Stein said there about Israel training American police. But this is, again, not democracy. For people who say to you, oh, you have to vote for Biden to preserve democracy from Trump. We don't live in a democracy. In a democracy, you can protest freely without the police pushing you around, locking you up, throwing a 70-year-old lady down on the ground and then arresting her. She described this on, I'm not going to play it for you right now, but she described it on the Brianna Joy Gray show, The Hill Rising. As she was bracing herself, she pushed her feet back, and I guess one of her feet grazed an officer, and for that she was arrested on charge of assaulting a police officer. So this is not democracy that we have right now. And for those of you who are making the argument that somehow we need to preserve it by voting for Joe Biden, we don't live in a democratic state, a true free country. And even if you said, well, you got a choice, right, in elections, do we really? The choice is between two really bad options, and not one that most American people wanted. We didn't get a primary. These aren't candidates that we really wanted. Either one, right? Neither Trump nor Biden are well liked. Now, it doesn't mean that had there been a robust, vigorous primary, they wouldn't have been selected. We seem to vote for people we don't really like. But again, that also isn't evidence, strong evidence, that we don't live in a democracy. People who are popular, who are well liked, who have a positive approval rating, simply aren't able to run the gauntlet because of the often very, very negative attention that the media provides, shines on them, often because of tremendous amounts of money that is showered on unpopular candidates because the policies that they pursue, unpopular though they may be, endless war, privatization, militarization, whatever it is, those policies, for-profit healthcare, those policies, while very unpopular among the great majority of the American public, are very, very, very popular among a tiny percentage who pretty much run things. And that's why we get the candidates we get. That's not democracy. If you say, well, we got AOC, she's on our side. She doesn't stand up to her party. She doesn't take a position different than what her party insists on occasion she take, whether it's voting for Nancy Pelosi to be the Speaker of the House, whether it's voting for Hakeem Jeffries, an AIPAC-approved, Wall Street-authorized candidate for House Minority Leader and Speaker of the House. AOC votes for him. So in the end, we don't live in a democracy. Now, I can say what I want on this live stream. I'm not really afraid of being arrested, but we don't really even truly have freedom of the press. Look at Julian Assange, persecuted because he revealed the torture by the American military, because he revealed crime, the surveillance state of Barack Obama. That's not a democracy, folks. It's depressing, but it's true. So Dr. Stein has said, and I want to really look into this. I mentioned earlier this week I want to look into the statement that the police that are siding with the pro-Israel, pro-genocide forces, that they somehow are taking orders from or are trained by Israel. I really want to look into that assertion because I never really I never knew that. I mean, I believed it. I thought it was credible. But even if Jill Stein tells me something is true, I'm not always going to necessarily just accept it. So I did my little homework, and it's easy. We thank God we do have this internet, which for all its faults does allow us to get information that we would otherwise perhaps not have. From The Guardian, the end of last year, U.S. police police agencies take intelligence directly from the Israeli Defense Forces, and also the police here take training from Muslim extremists. That was this blue leaks trove. I'd never even heard of that. I believe that was on WikiLeaks. So again, Julian Assange put this was on Twitter. Twitter got a lot of heat for putting a lot of this on its platform. And then they said, we're sorry, we won't do it again. We won't embarrass the U.S. police forces in this country. Well, they should be exposed. The fact that a foreign power, an oppressive state, at this point now a genocidal state, is training our military, our police in military tactics, that's very, very, very upsetting. Again, more proof, not evidence, but proof that we really don't live in a democracy. So don't tell me we need to vote for Biden to save our democracy. We've already lost it. The argument you can make is Trump would be even worse. And he probably would be. But at some point, you have to say, well, how much worse? Does it matter? At some point, is Trump worse on every issue? And if he's not, are the issues where he's not worse important? And I would say certainly on Ukraine, yes, that's really, really, really important. Amnesty International. This is from 2016. So it's dated, but I haven't found anything, well, one article that says, yes, some police forces are no longer undergoing Israeli training sessions that previously did. But it still appears that, yes, Israel is behind perhaps calling the shots when we see those attacks on campus protesters challenging Israeli hegemony. May well be that Israel is calling police up. There are Israeli police embedded, as you'll see, in American police forces. So they're, to a degree, calling the shots. A foreign power has infiltrated our police. That's not democracy, folks. If you want to join me on this, love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. And again, don't forget, I need you, if you can, to subscribe now. There you go. There's your little bell. Subscribe now and get alerts too. I'm really focused on getting those subscription numbers up. They continue to tick up slowly. Love to see them go up a little faster. Where are police getting their, in what states and what areas are police getting training from Israel and the IDF? It looks like it's all over the friggin' country. I think this was reported back in 2016. This was about the time of those Baltimore riots. If you recall, the Baltimore police killed a man they had taken into custody. He rattled around. They basically did not secure him safely in the back of a van. They drove around high speed through the streets of Baltimore. He was shaken inside of it like a kernel of popcorn popping inside of a popper until he was popped and killed. Police got a lot of criticism for that. There were riots. Those Baltimore law enforcement officers, some of them were trained by Israel. And other states I highlighted that seemed especially relevant, California and New York, because we've seen such violent actions by the New York City Police Department against the Columbia protesters and by the Los Angeles police against the UCLA protesters, standing down, by the way. Again, you start to wonder, how much training did Israel give these people? Standing down when the pro-Israel, pro-genocide, quote, protesters invaded the UCLA encampment with sticks and started beating pro-Palestine supporters. Many of whom were Jewish, by the way. Many are Jewish at that encampment. The police stood down, just sort of let it happen. When finally the pro-Palestine protesters responded, or even after this had happened, and the Israeli pro-Israel forces withdrew from the encampment at UCLA, at that point the police went in and also very aggressively, very violently mistreated the pro-peace protesters. So you wonder, how much influence has Israel had over the Los Angeles Police Department? Now, this article is dated 2016, but again, I believe these policies continue unabated, and I'll explain why in a moment. It's not democracy. We don't live in democracy anymore, folks. It's not full-blown fascism, but there are many fascist fascistic elements to what we have right now. And it's tragic, sad. I mean, I used to say, I always would question people, I always say, hey, do you really think it's a good idea to have kids in this environment? And I would say that even more today. I really don't understand when you look at how bad everything is, with little hope for things to improve, why you would want to bring another life into this world. And just to revisit, I've talked about this also, that Professor Galway said kids aren't having sex, and that is very sad. I wish children would enjoy youth, not children, young people. I'd say children for me, over 18. But I want young people to enjoy their youth. But I think that you enjoy your youth, that doesn't mean you have children, because at this point, there's just too much bad stuff happening. And too many very, very legitimate worries, fears that we should have of the future. Memphis Police Chief, this is dated Feb 23, so it's a little over a year ago. Sarah Davis was trained with Israeli security forces. So you see, chiefs of major cities have that Israeli training. But she's also said, no, I have that training and I don't want it anymore for my people. So good for her. That's a great thing that she did, to say we're not going to be doing this. And she did it in Memphis, but also in Durham. I don't know, maybe Memphis isn't. I'm not even sure. She said no in Durham, North Carolina, where she was chief. Durham is a little bit smaller city. So I guess if you're a chief, the bigger the city you're chief of, the better. That's moving up, right? It's like if you're an anchor in Dubuque, you want to move up to Milwaukee, and then from Milwaukee to Chicago, etc. So Durham is a big city, but not Memphis. So Cyril Davis moving up from Durham to Memphis. When she was in Durham, she got her training, I believe, from the Israeli forces. That has got a lot of criticism. So Aaron Efrati from Jewish Voice for Peace, again, completely debunking the claim, the notion that somehow the pro-Palestine protesters are anti-Semitic. The anti-Zionist, the anti-Israel people are somehow anti-Semitic. Obviously false. Aaron Efrati, Jewish, from Jewish Voice for Peace, says, U.S.-Israeli police exchanges do not keep our community safe. What they do is allow the police to refine and enhance their militarized ethos with the Israeli tactics and technology of occupation and apartheid that, even worse, is tested on Palestinians. So the Palestinians, the victims, the guinea pigs of the Israeli oppressive police tactics. We don't live in a democracy. We just don't. I mean, you don't have police trained by foreign occupying powers like Israel. You don't have that in a free democracy, in a country where the people have rights, rights to peaceably assemble, rights to free speech, rights to be free of police brutality. If that were the country we lived in, Israel wouldn't be training our police forces. When Cyril Davis was, I believe, chief of Durham Police, she said, we're not going to do any more of those trainings with Israel. We're done. It's not good. I don't like it. I want nothing to do with it. And the result, 2 embedded Israeli police officers in the Durham force sued her and the police department for discrimination. So, again, pushing the lie that anything that challenges Israel is anti-Semitic. Wanted to move on. There was an uncommitted rally, vote uncommitted rally here in my home state of Maryland yesterday, and I was hoping to attend it. I did not because the timing was really bad, and I had a commitment I just could not break. So unfortunately, I missed it. But I do want to play this news report, which unfortunately is not of the actual protest. It reports that the protest is going to happen. So let's play that first, and then I also want to get to the question of whether, whether there really are good arguments in support of Joe Biden besides he's not Trump, right? I mean, that's the argument that does carry a little bit of water with me, right? He isn't Trump. Trump's bad, so that's a positive for Biden. Are there arguments that rather than simply being the less awful alternative, he's actually not that, he's actually kind of good, which is what you see those memes on the internet all the time. They drive me crazy. He's actually a good person. It's not just that he's the lesser of two evils. He's truly a good man. I'm like, well, what's your evidence? It's just a load of crap. You can say it all you want, but you don't have evidence to support it. So here's in support of the vote in uncommitted movement, which recognizes the problematic nature of a Joe Biden re-election.
We are just a few days away from the start of early voting in the Maryland primary, and tonight we're taking a closer look at one of the options Democrats will see on the ballot.
Our Adam Longo explains this growing push for people to vote uncommitted this year and what that could mean come November.
Voters in Maryland's Democratic primary for years have had the option of voting uncommitted instead of voting for a Democrat candidate. Now, that option has taken on new importance this year as activists are using uncommitted as a protest vote against President Biden and U.S. policy on the Israel-Hamas war.
We just believe that this is our moral responsibility to protest in this way.
Hannah Zuberi is one of the leaders of the Listen to Maryland campaign, urging voters to check uncommitted. It continues a trend we've seen throughout this presidential primary season. 15 states so far have seen uncommitted get more than 10% of the vote against President Biden.
People are really surprised that there's this option and who are for ceasefire. And they're like, yeah, definitely, we'll be on board and we'll tell more friends of ours that this is an option.
Volunteers got together tonight over Zoom for phone bank training. They're calling Maryland Democrats to get the word out, but some haven't been so receptive.
We have gotten a lot of we stand with Israel, and we believe Biden's doing really great. He should do.
Yeah, so I'm so not surprised by that. We have a pretty high percentage of Jewish voters. And again, there are plenty of Jewish people, certainly myself included, who recognize the intrinsic evil of what Israel is doing. But there are many who don't. And they have been trained since birth to believe that Israel needs our support, and that in the end, it's the Jews or everyone, or everyone else. And we always have to stand with the Jewish people, especially when they're fighting back. So I totally disagree with that kind of tribalistic view. I think it's the direct result is what we're seeing now. But that is what some people believe, and it's very, very sad, and it is the way it is what it is. Hannah Berry here is doing great work. I question, and I'll get into this a little bit more, whether voting uncommitted really means much. And she kind of acknowledges that it doesn't. But let's play more.
One criticism the group is working to avoid is that an uncommitted vote against Biden is somehow a vote for Donald Trump. Zuberi says their sole focus is this primary, not November's general election.
We can very safely exhibit our concern without having to worry about what happens in November.
See, and that's the problem. If there was an alternative to Biden on the ballot that could actually win the Democratic primary, then you vote for that alternative and maybe you defeat Biden. But if you take the position that, well, we're just sort of sending a message, but it's not going to hurt Biden in any way, then why would he change his policy? There's no negative implication. This gives the James Carvilles of the world, the Paul Begallos of the world, the flacks, the Democratic hacks who go on CNN and MSNBC to tell you how great Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton are, even though your eyes and ears tell you, show you, demonstrate for you just the opposite. The dead, the counts of dead throughout the world, the continued dependence on fossil fuels, they all prove just the opposite. That poverty around the globe prove just the opposite of their claims, the Carvilles and the Bagalas, how great the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bidens are. We all know that's a load of crap. But by pushing uncommitted without actually having a plan to defeat Joe Biden and his ilk, without being able to say, no, we have to vote for something else, not just uncommitted, but for, not just against Biden, but for something that is good, that is decent, that can bring about some peace, some economic justice, some environmental justice, then it's basically meaningless, isn't it?
None of us are concerned that Trump is going to win in Maryland at all.
Zuberi and other leaders of this movement are planning to be in Silver Spring on Thursday for a Vote Uncommitted Maryland statewide rally. That starts at 4 o'clock. I've got more details in my story on WSA9.com. No coincidence that Thursday is also the first day of in-person early voting in the Maryland primary.
All right, so I do commend the folks at WSA9 for covering that story. I think that it's relevant. I don't know whether the Carvilles and the Bagalas care. Maybe they're glad too, because they can use the uncommitted movement as another distraction from what Joe Biden is actually doing. Look, they want Trump to win. Look at those college protesters. They hate Israel. They're anti-Semitic. So, you know, the media is going to do what it does. The capture media is going to do what it does. We need alternatives. I don't view uncommitted as, in the end, a real alternative, but I guess it's certainly better than voting for Joe Biden. Will I vote uncommitted? I probably will vote in the Maryland primary, Democratic primary. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure if I can write in. If I can write in a candidate, I will. Because, do I have a little coffee? There's something in there. Oh, I guess it's just a little spot I didn't get shaved correctly. So yeah, if I can vote for someone else, I will. Otherwise, maybe I'll vote uncommitted. I can't vote for Marianne Williamson. I don't know if there's any other names on there. I always relish the opportunity not to vote for Jamie Raskin. Criticism. So one of my long time, I guess I wouldn't say it's a love-hate relation, but a guy who's been very supportive of me often in the past, but also doesn't pull punches and is certainly prepared to let me know when he disagrees, sent me an email, really angry email about my, and this is the story, this really seems to get people's goat, is my insistence that we are not on the side of angels in Ukraine, that we are doing the wrong thing by continuing to arm Ukraine, that Trump is actually right on this particular issue. And this gets people very angry and upset and agitated. And they tend, I believe, to make arguments that don't really fly. But before I get into them, I just want to make one point. When you see what the United States is doing with respect to Israel-Palestine, the support we continue to provide, the cover we provide for the genocidal Israel state, when you look at the fascistic crackdown on student protesters, then I think you have to really, you know, if you're honest, you have to say to yourself, well, is the United States really some kind of a beacon? Are we really in a position where we can, with any credibility, any legitimacy, act as a moral arbiter when it comes to conflicts between other nations? Even one that, at least at first blush, seems to reflect the Ukrainians, or seems to demonstrate the Ukrainians as victims of Russian aggression. Are we, though, given our record, what we did, what we continue to do to the Middle East, and, you know, with specificity, just destroying, hollowing out Iraq, opening up that entire region to Iranian influence, to Al-Qaeda. When you look at what we did to Libya, turning it into a terrorist training zone and a slave trading region, when you look at those kinds of actions, the idea that we should be involving ourselves in wars overseas really, I think, has to give you pause. And regardless of what the the president says or Congress says about the justice of a particular engagement by our military or support by our government, you have to, I think, say, well, can I believe anything they're telling me? Is there anything that's likely to be accurate when they argue the Ukrainians need our support, this is good for Ukraine, this is the right thing to do? Do they have any credibility when they say that? And certainly you have to look at the record. But when you listen to realists like Mearsheimer and before he died, Kissinger, who was obviously a neocon and very, very strong supporter of U.S. military actions around the world, wrongly, terribly wrongly. But even he recognized that we shouldn't be pushing NATO eastward, that we were threatening Russia. We were really getting into Russia's kitchen, and we should expect Russia would respond. So here, when I say we shouldn't be promoting endless war, we shouldn't be sending weaponry, billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's only leading to more dead Ukrainians and more dead Russians, laying waste to the region, and off a region that's seen it's more than its share of death and destruction and carnage. So the response is, well, Ukrainians have a choice, die fighting or die lying down. Well, that's not really true. First of all, many of the Ukrainians are not choosing to be part of the military. There's a high number of folks who are, avoiding service however possible. That's why the conscription age was reduced. That's why you see those wolves, I guess they're called, and they're not the gray wolves, but some kind of wolves, steppe wolves, who are out there in their 60s, right? So it's not true that they have a choice to die fighting, right? Many of them have no choice if they don't want to go to jail. The other choice is also a falsehood, die lying down. There's zero reason. I know people said, oh, Russia's genocidal. There's no reason to believe that. Russia hasn't gone around door to door, start killing people in the regions it's captured, not in the least. That's not Russia's goal. Russia wants, it's very, very clear, they want a buffer. They want a buffer zone between the West and Russia. Ukraine has an enormous border with Russia. Ukrainians have in the past sided with invaders like the Nazis. What Russia wants, and it seems perfectly legitimate to me, is to have some sort of a demilitarized border on their, to the West. And that's something we can certainly work with them on. So it's not a choice of die fighting or die lying down. And then it's personal stuff. You can feel good spending all political capital decrying global warming while piously driving my Teslas and jetting around on vacation. So the personal stuff, really, I really have a problem with that. But I'm going to respond briefly. I don't feel particularly good about anything I do. I don't feel particularly pious. I do what I do because I think it's the right thing to do under the circumstances. I'm trying my hardest to address very, very serious existential threats that are, right now ruining lives. Millions of lives are being ruined. Billions are threatened. The policies that I champion do not benefit me specifically. I do think I would be, one of the beneficiaries from, say, Medicare for all. But my healthcare situation is much better than so many of the people that I'm thinking about who would benefit far more than I do. I already have good insurance. It's not like I have to worry about that, and my health is good too. I just would prefer to live in a country where everyone has good health care and no one is going bankrupt. That's all. So yeah, I guess that's sort of self-interested, but it's not like I'm getting a benefit that isn't much better for a lot of other people who are less well off. The jetting around on vacations, I feel, I get that. Probably there's something wrong. Yes, you fly, you contribute to global warming. But again, the solutions that I favor, much higher fossil fuel taxes, would make my vacations much more expensive and would cause me to maybe not take those vacations. So yeah, I mean, I'm not calling for something that that doesn't negatively impact on me. So yeah, I don't really get what you're saying, to be honest with you. It's just a way. What it is a criticism of me, so you don't have to respond specifically to the very serious issues that threaten all of us. And it's very, very unfortunate. So I want to show the second page. There's pretty negative stuff here. And I highlighted some stuff, but really, I probably should have highlighted the last sentence because that's the only thing I'm going to focus on. Not so much the personal stuff about how I want to live my sheltered life and all that. Yeah. No, the world is not as simple as you'd have us believe. And I agree that the world is far from simple. But I'm not one of those who's claiming it's simple. The ones who argue it's simple are the ones who are saying, oh yes, Russia invaded Ukraine and the Ukrainians have a very simple choice. Die fighting or die lying down. No, that is the simplistic view. That is the view that doesn't recognize the complexity of the situation of a country, Russia, that has actually suffered greatly from foreign invasions. That does see itself as isolated on the world stage. That is seeing a population diminish. So to claim I somehow see the world simplistically is false. What I do see is that endless war is incredibly destructive, harmful, that leads to lots and lots and lots, millions, tens of millions of innocent victims. It means that, and if you say, oh no, there aren't tens of millions, oh well, the families of the dead, of the injured, the impoverishment of countries, the destruction of their regions, of course. And also because it not only it hurts the people that are directly implicated in the war, but it also means we're worsening other issues, like worsening other problems, like the climate holocaust. So I totally reject the claim that I somehow see the world as simplistic. All right, I said there was a hard break at 12:30 Eastern, and it's just about 12:30 Eastern. I also wanted to play a quick clip. I guess I lied a little bit. I'll go a little bit over. I have to be at the school in 50 minutes or so, but it's only a half-hour drive, so I can go just a little bit over. I do want to cover this story because I think it's pretty, again, instructive of where we are as a society. I'm going to try to go very, very quickly, but this is about this Ozempic kerfluffle. And by the way, I want to give a quick shout out to a DJ, or not a DJ, that's the wrong word, but a host in Seattle named Jack Stein. I learned about him through Billy Sunshine, who is on that show, the Jack Stein Show in the afternoon in Seattle. I didn't love it. He's pretty darn conservative. I'm sort of disappointed. Well, I won't say surprised Billy, will put up with that stuff, but that's up to him. That's his call for sure. But he did talk about this story, and that's how I learned of it, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So here it is. Melissa McCarthy, former, still somewhat heavy-set actress, maybe not as heavy-set as she used to be, and BABS.
Melissa McCarthy has responded to Barbra Streisand's question about whether or not she's used Ozempic. In a now-deleted comment, the iconic singer wrote underneath the photo of McCarthy and Adam Shankman, "Give him my regards. Did you take Ozempic?" The comment quickly went viral. In response to all the online chatter, McCarthy shared this video on Instagram.
The takeaway, Barbara Streisand knows I exist. She reached out to me and she thought I looked good. I win the day.
Streisand also later explained her remark on social media, saying she was merely praising McCarthy's appearance. She wrote, "OMG, I went on Instagram to see the photos we'd posted of the beautiful flowers I'd received for my birthday. Below them was a photo of my friend Melissa McCarthy, who I sang with on my Encore album." The singer continued, "She looked fantastic. I just wanted to pay her a compliment. I forgot the world was reading." While McCarthy has spoken out...
All right, so enough of that. So, first of all, my question for Barbara Streisand would be, how much work have you had done? I mean, what is she? Is she about 90? I think she might be that old. I'm looking her up right now. Which she's 82, so she's not quite 90, but she's 82. So just as apparently, because McCarthy didn't deny using Ozempic, just like McCarthy, Barbara is using whatever tools are available to a woman of great wealth and leisure to keep herself looking younger, more attractive, I guess. I want to say that. I don't particularly find all that wrinkle smoothing out and all that so attractive personally, but okay, whatever. If that's what she wants to do, I get it. And then there's a lot of criticism of McCarthy there's a lot of criticism of Streisand for even raising the question of Ozempic, which is, this one tool that apparently this one drug that really does seem to keep people's weight down, right? Nothing else. People just can't seem to lose weight no matter what they do. But Ozempic really helps. And a lot of people are saying, oh, it's none of your business. It's nobody's business. Well, I totally disagree with that. People don't want to be obese. People don't want to be overweight. I understand there's all these ad campaigns, usually funded by the fast food industry, to try to get it to seem like, oh, we can't shame people. It's not a question of shaming someone. I mean, we do shame people. Society does. But people don't want to be overweight because it doesn't feel good, because it's not healthy, because you get arthritis as a result, because it puts strain on your heart. That's why people don't, because you don't look as good, because we're not physically attracted in general. Yes, men do find curvy women attractive, sure, and over, somewhat what doctors would say is not ideal weight can be attractive overweight men who are wealthy, powerful, influential, can certainly find mates without any difficulty. But in general, it's not as attractive. We're not innately as attracted to overweight people as we are to people who are, the correct body weight, if you will, according to science and health. And yet many of us are heavy. And you're not supposed to question, well, why did you take Ozempic? Well, the hell we shouldn't. When you have movie stars who have tremendous amounts of leisure time, right, yes, they work hard. I'm not saying they work hard, but between movies, between filming of their TV shows, they can be exercising. They hire personal coaches to run around LA. They hire personal chefs to cook tasty, healthy foods, which most people can't get anywhere near. And yet, even people who have that kind of pull often can't keep their weight down. They try. Oprah's tried. She keeps trying and trying. She can't do it. So the takeaway is, we live in an incredibly unhealthy society. What we do is bad. We drive around in cars. We don't walk places. We sit at a cubicle for 8 hours, 12 hours a day, and we shove chips in our face. That's not the way to live a healthy life. And it's not the way to live an attractive life or feel good about ourselves. And rather than demanding, no, we have to have walkable communities. We need to be able to take more breaks from our job. We shouldn't be working more than 37 or 35 hours a week at most. We should be much more active. Instead of demanding all that, what the message is, don't ask anybody, but if they take Ozempic, they'll look good. They'll lose weight. That's the mess. And spend more money, right? Because if you're buying that Ozempic, you're lining the pockets. I don't know who makes it. Is it Pfizer? I don't know. So that's why you're not supposed to ask the question, because we're not supposed to question, period, a society that makes some of us, not all of us. I mean, I'm relatively healthy weight. I actually wouldn't mind losing a few pounds myself. But a society where most people are overweight, most people are sedentary, most people have very unhealthy diets. We're viewed as consumers. That's what our value is. Not as individuals, as human beings who should get to live our best lives as healthy, strong people. But people who are, it's more profitable if we're sedentary, fat, drunk, gamaholics. And if you don't ask questions like, well, hey, were you able, if Melissa McCarthy could come, and say, yeah, I can't do it. The society I live in now in Beverly Hills, driving around my BMW or whatever car she drives and all of that, I just can't lose weight. All the constant bombardment of messages, I need to eat this, I need to get this fast food. I can't stay thin. I can't stay healthy. I can't stay slender. And neither can hundreds of millions of other Americans. So what's the solution? It's not Ozempic. The long-term solution has to be completely changing society, remaking it. People in Sardinia, I'll close with this, and I hope you have a great weekend. People in Sardinia, apparently there's like a very high percentage of centenarians there. So they don't shuffle seniors off into some home somewhere. People and families, they live on small farms usually. They're working, there's gardens. Even in your 90s, you're expected to take part in critical activities, child rearing, babysitting, whatever you can do, gardening. You're old, you can sit in your garden and you pull weeds out so the vegetables will grow and we'll get a healthier crop. We'll get a bigger crop. That's the kind of society we need. That's a society we have to remake. That ain't the kind of society that Joe Biden is going to give you. All right, I'll be back Monday. Arlen, hope you have a great weekend. And yeah, I'm going to give you that one more time. There it is. Let's see if it'll work. Do subscribe.